Do you want to know how one of history's worst aviation disasters was stopped by the one person nobody bothered to see? Picture a lavish party right at the gate. Champagne flowing, radiant smiles, and the world's most luxurious plane about to take its inaugural flight. Every expert, every top pilot was there, patting themselves on the back for their own greatness. But they missed one person. The woman in the faded shirt, kneeling beneath the plane. They mocked her, shooed her away like a nuisance. Little did they know, they had just dismissed their only ticket to survival. This is the story of that day. Part 1. The parade of self-importancy. Want to hear about the day arrogance almost turned a technological masterpiece into a flying tomb? Let's go back to that morning, to an airport terminal where the air was thick with the smell of ambition. Picture it. The floors polished to a mirror shine, reflecting raised champagne glasses and million-dollar smiles. This wasn't just any flight. This was the debut of the Silver Falcon, the jet that would redefine luxury in the sky. And all around it, a play was being performed. Captains with silver hair and perfectly pressed uniforms strode about like gods of the sky descended to earth, surrounded by journalists hungry for a golden quote. VIPs whispered about million-dollar deals, their laughter sounding hollow and rehearsed. And then there she was. Beneath the shimmering metal belly of that beast, tucked away in a corner untouched by the flash of camera bulbs, was Megan Clark. She was kneeling on the hot tarmac, her faded shirt sticking to her back, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail with a few strands escaping in the wind. One hand held an old voltage meter, the other tracing a hydraulic line that no one else had bothered to look at. She was utterly out of place, a wrong note in this perfect symphony of wealth. "Hey, look at that," a young pilot muttered to his colleague, just loud enough for a few others to hear and chuckle. Guess they hired extra help to polish the tires for the press. A PR director in a sharp suit, tablet in hand, walked over to Megan. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sweet as sugar, but her eyes cold as steel. "Could you please move aside? You're ruining our perfect shot." Megan didn't even look up. Her eyes were glued to the small screen of her device, where a number was blinking erratically, a faulty heartbeat only she could hear amidst the noise of self-congratulation. She ignored them. To her, this plane wasn't a symbol of luxury. It was a complex system of a million parts, and if just one of them failed, all the champagne and smiles in the world wouldn't mean a thing. Just then, a heavy-set supervisor with a clipboard stumped over, his polished leather shoes stopping inches from Megan's knee. He cleared his throat loudly, making sure to draw attention. "Hey, are you done here?" he barked. "There's a whole restroom in Terminal C waiting for you. Stop wasting time out here." The laughter rippled again, louder this time. But Megan still didn't say a word. She just silently tightened the bolt, her eyes reflecting a world that none of them could see, a world of numbers, of warnings, and of a danger that was growing right beneath their feet. Part 2. The silent scream, and you think she would give up? You think a few insults or a condescending look could extinguish the fire in those eyes. No. To Megan, that was all just background noise. The annoying buzz of flies during open-heart surgery. As the supervisor turned away, satisfied with his display of authority, Megan vanished. She didn't run. She blended. She slipped into a group of passing ground crew, her faded shirt becoming the perfect camouflage among the blue-gray uniforms. She moved through the chaotic crowd with the silence of a ghost, invisible to anyone who only judged by appearances. Ironically, the access port she needed was located right behind a giant advertising screen, where the smiling face of the CEO was promising an era of absolute safety. Megan slipped into the narrow space behind it, the smell of dust and electronic ozone filling her nostrils. She pulled a laptop from her backpack, an old machine, scratched and battered on the outside, but with the processing power the Pentagon would envy. A few seconds later, the screen lit up with green lines of code cascading like a digital rainstorm. Most people would see only a meaningless mess, but Megan read it like a conductor reads a symphony. And then she saw a dot. It wasn't a system error. It was a ghost. A line of code that didn't belong, appearing and disappearing in a millisecond. A footprint in the snow that shouldn't have been there. It was a backdoor. A deadly whisper in the plane's electronic brain. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly unplugged and stepped out, just as a tall engineer in a pristine white uniform nearly tripped over her. "Watch where you're going," he grumbled. "Your backup alert system," Megan said flatly, her voice void of emotion. "It's been disabled from the outside. The wiring in junction box J7 is sending a false positive." The engineer looked at her, then down at her scuffed shoes and her cheap multimeter, and laughed. A full, condescending laugh. "Leave that to the people with degrees, little girl," he said, patting her on the shoulder. "Now move out of the way for the people who actually know what they're doing." She didn't falter. She rushed to the security counter at the gate. The final boarding call was echoing through the terminal. "I need to speak to the captain. There's a serious security breach," she told the gate agent. The agent, busy checking a VIP's ticket, didn't even look at her. "Please, get in line, and only passengers are allowed in this area. This is a matter of life and death," Megan insisted. "Ma'am, life and death right now is making sure the senator has enough legroom on this historic flight," he replied sarcastically and turned away. Desperate, Megan saw a flight attendant hurrying towards the jet bridge. She intercepted her, trying to hand her a piece of paper on which she'd scribbled a few technical notes. "Please," she pleaded, "give this to the pilot. There's something wrong with the autopilot." The flight attendant looked at Megan's grimy hands, then gave her a disgusted look from head to toe. She didn't take the note. Instead, she said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, "When you're done playing technician here, why don't you go mop up the staff break room? The floor is filthy." Every door had been slammed shut. Every effort was useless. Around her, the plane began to roar to life, ready to take off, carrying nearly 100 souls and a deadly secret into the plays. Sky. Part 3. The race against the sky. The silver Falcon let out one final roar and lifted itself from the ground. A graceful metal arrow, a symbol of perfection, soaring into the deep blue sky, carrying nearly 100 souls unaware they were flying. On a time bomb. On the ground, Megan was out of time for pleading. She acted. Her eyes scanned the hallway, ignoring faces, looking for something else. And she found it. A small steel door with no handle, only a card reader with the words, "Data Center Restricted Access." It wasn't an empty room. It was the heart of the network, the brain of the terminal. From her backpack, she pulled out a thin piece of metal that looked like a reshaped paperclip. In 3 seconds, with a dry click that no one heard, the electronic lock was bypassed. Inside, the air was hot and thick with the hum of hundreds of servers. This was the underbelly of the glamorous world outside. No champagne, just the smell of dust and hot silicon. She found an emergency diagnostic port and plugged her machine directly into the system's main artery, and the battle began. On her screen, the digital snake she had glimpsed earlier now showed its true form. It was no longer a ghost. It was a predator. It was actively masking itself, creating false data to fool the security protocols. But it wasn't fighting an ordinary technician. It was fighting the person who had written half of those protocols. Her fingers flew across the keyboard like a frantic pianist, and then she tore away its final layer of camouflage. Her eyes widened in horror. The virus wasn't just capable of hijacking the plane. It was hijacking the plane. It was silently uploading a fake flight plan, a ghost route, leading directly into the heart of a tropical storm forming over the Pacific. It was the perfect murder-suicide, to be logged as a tragic accident due to weather. "What the hell are you doing in here?" a voice barked behind her. The IT supervisor from earlier, the one she'd seen in the control room, was standing in the doorway, a cup of coffee in his hand. He had come to grab a spare cable. His face was a mask of fury. "This is a restricted area. I'm calling security ... His words died in his throat. His eyes fell on Megan's screen. The coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He didn't have to be a top expert to recognize the weather map and the flight path overlapping. In a deadly embrace, cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He wasn't just seeing a hacker. He was seeing a massacre about to happen, displayed in lines of code ... malicious ... code. He stammered, "Call the control room." Megan yelled, her eyes never leaving the screen. "Tell them Flight 77 is under attack. Demand manual override now. Priority code Delta-0-9. In the control room, all hell broke loose. On the main radar screen, the green dot of Flight 77 suddenly veered off its projected path. Red alarms began flashing across the board's dot in the cockpit. The captain had just cracked a joke with his co-pilot when the yoke suddenly vibrated violently. The plane tilted slightly to the right, though no command had been given. What was that? The co-pilot shouted, trying to pull the yoke back. "It's not responding. We've lost control." Back at the terminal, the laughter and conversation at the gate party died. On the big screens, the live feed from the plane suddenly filled with static, replaced by a flight path graphic that was alarmingly off course. Champagne glasses froze midair. "They can't break it." The IT guy screamed next to Megan, his voice frantic after a call. "The virus is fighting back. It's locked them out. Tell them." Megan roared, her fingers finding one last vulnerability. "Bypass the yoke. Kill all autopilot subsystems via the physical circuit breaker. But 27, it's right above their heads. Tell them now." The message was relayed in a panicked chain, from Megan to the IT guy to the control room to the cockpit. On the lurching plane, the co-pilot looked up desperately and saw a row of red circuit breakers. He yanked the one labeled B-27. The plane shuddered violently, like a wild beast pulled back by a leash. Everything in the cabin rattled. Then, after a terrifying second of silence, the plane began to stabilize. The captain's voice, shaking but in control, came over the radio. "Control ... We have regained control." The silver Falcon had been pulled from the jaws of death, just a few miles shy of the storm. Part 4. When the masks shattered, the silver Falcon didn't land to applause. It landed to the wailing sirens of ambulances and fire trucks lining the runway, like an honor guard for a funeral that never happened. The door opened, and the passengers emerged not with the proud look of pioneers, but with the pale faces of survivors. The arrogance was gone, replaced by trembling hands and empty eyes. Meanwhile, in the data center, Megan's victory lasted less than a minute. The steel door was thrown open. Airport security, fully armed, stormed in, followed by the heavy-set supervisor and the tall engineer. Their faces held no gratitude, only smug triumph. "Finally, we got you, you saboteur," the supervisor snarled, pointing a finger at Megan. "You must have planted the virus and then pretended to stop it to get attention. Cuff her." To security. Officers moved forward, their cold metal handcuffs ready, but they stopped. Another group of people had entered the room. They didn't wear airport uniforms. They wore expensive black suits and moved with a silent, absolute authority. The leader, a man with salt and pepper hair and emotionless eyes, glanced over the chaotic scene and settled his gaze on the supervisor. "Thank You for your diligence, he said, his voice calm but filled with ice. Your work here is done. Now step aside. The supervisor started to protest, but something in the stranger's eyes made him fall silent. The security team shuffled back awkwardly. The powerful man turned to Megan, who was still sitting in front of the screen, exhausted but calm. He gave a slight nod, a gesture of profound respect. Your report was invaluable, Clark. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Clark? The man turned back to face the stunned airport officials. He raised his voice, loud enough for everyone in the hallway and beyond to hear. For those who are wondering, he began, this is Dr. Megan Clark, former head of aerospace safety at NASA, top cybersecurity expert for the Department of Defense, the person who designed the security shield systems for nearly every commercial aircraft flying today. Every title he read was like a hammer blow to their egos. Dr. Clark was sent here by us on a covert inspection, he continued, his eyes scanning each of the color-draining faces, to see how your billion-dollar system, and the people who run it, would collapse under pressure. The test wasn't about the plane, ladies and gentlemen. The test was about you. The tall engineer, the one who had laughed in her face, felt his college degree shrink in his pocket. The heavy-set supervisor, who had told her to go clean a restroom, felt his legs go weak. Out in the main hall, the captain, who had just been hailed as a hero by the press, heard the whispers spreading through the crowd. He saw Megan emerge, escorted by the men in black suits, and he remembered his joke about the janitor. His glory suddenly felt hollow and shameful. He wasn't the hero. He was just another passenger saved by the woman he had laughed at. In the crowd, the flight attendant who had dismissed Megan felt her chest tighten. The words, "Go mop up the break room," echoed in her head like a conviction. She wished the ground would open up and swallow her whole. A silence fell over the terminal. It wasn't the silence of relief. It was the sound of dozens of egos shattering, of a multi-billion-dollar industry suddenly realizing how naked and foolish it was. And in the center of it all, Megan Clark said nothing. She didn't have to. Part 5. The aftershock and the quiet legacy. What happened next wasn't a storm. It was an earthquake. An earthquake that shook the entire airline industry to its foundations. The airline stock plummeted. Investigations were launched. A score of brilliant minds in luxurious boardrooms had to pack up their desks. Their illustrious careers turned to dust by a single morning's events. A few days later, the CEO with the smiling face from the ad had to stand before a forest of cameras. He started with empty platitudes about a commitment to safety and lessons learned. But then he saw Megan standing silently at the back of the press room, not judging, just watching. Her gaze, the same one that had seen through the virus, now saw through his charade. The CEO suddenly faltered. He tore up his prepared speech, and for the first time, he looked small. "We were wrong," he said, his voice hoarse. "Our arrogance almost killed everyone. I am sorry." The apologies came in a flood. The captain sought Megan out, his swagger gone, replaced only by regret. He didn't know what to say, managing only to stammer "thank you" and "I'm sorry." Megan just gave a slight nod. Her forgiveness was more terrifying than any accusation. Airline offered her a position, Vice President of Global Safety. A blank check, absolute authority to rewrite every rule. They thought they could buy her, turn her into a symbol of their change. She refused. In a meeting with the new board of directors, she said, "Your system doesn't need a new director. It needs a new culture. And culture isn't built from the top down. It's nurtured from the bottom up." Instead of taking power, she used her influence to create something else. She established the Clark Foundation, a fellowship and training program for talented, Engineers and technicians from underprivileged backgrounds, the kind of people who are often overlooked because they don't have the right look or the right degree. She sought out people like herself, the quiet ones with sharp eyes. The airline industry changed. New safety manuals were printed, and on the first page, they were called the Clark Protocols. In the airport terminal, near the spot where the glittering ad screen once stood, a simple bronze plaque now hangs. It has no pictures, only a few lines of text. Expertise wears no uniform. Courage holds no title. Listen to the quiet voices, for in their silence may lie your salvation. And a strange thing began to happen. People started to notice. Pilots started stopping to talk to the ground crew. Flight attendants smiled at the cleaning staff. Passengers began to see people, not just uniforms. The story of the janitor who saved the plane became an industry legend. And Megan Clark? She vanished again, back into the world of ghosts in the machine, leaving behind an aftershock that changed everything. So I ask you, right here, right now, what does real expertise look like? And what does real respect demand? The next time you're faced with a voice you deem unimportant, a person you could easily ignore, will you stop and listen? Or will you walk on by betting your own life on your own arrogance? The answer, just like the fate of Flight 77, lies with you.